another round of Inside the Clinch. Coming to you live from the Big Apple, Queens, New York. We are the home of all your MMA news, fights, and content. Here are your hosts, Johnny and Eric.
Hey everyone, welcome to the first round of Inside the Clinch. My name is Eric and I'm joined by my longtime friend Johnny. Both of us are longtime MMA fans and former wrestling and judoka athletes. They used to train and compete around the world. The two of us just wanted to start this podcast just to kind of talk about what's happening in the world of MMA, some new matchups that are being announced, as well as some past matchup results, and just to give a little bit of speculation of maybe even some future fights we'd like to see within certain organizations. Some of the organizations we're going to be discussing are going to be UFC, Bellator, One Championship, Ryzen, the PFL, and occasionally some boxing events. We're still working out some kinks, but we're planning on being available on all the major platforms, including Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Google Podcasts, as well as YouTube. So check us out wherever it's most convenient.
Yeah, so we just passed a stacked card this weekend. We just passed UFC Fight Island 6 in Abu Dhabi. So in this episode, we're going to be breaking down that. We're also are going to be breaking down Bellator. Cris Cyborg just defended her title for the first time. So we'll talk about the ins and outs of that. Michael Chandler made the transition to the UFC. So that's another topic point that we're going to be going over today. And most importantly, Justin Gaethje and Khabib this weekend, finally. So we're going to be breaking down the fight. We're going to be giving our predictions, and this is going to be a fun one, man, because you and I have been talking about this one for a while. So
finally get this running right before such a big card.
Hell yeah. Let's do it. So, Eric, coming off a pretty sick, pretty stacked UFC card, UFC Fight Island 6 in Abu Dhabi. The sixth appearance of the UFC in Abu Dhabi. They've been spectacular thus far. Before we get into the fights, I just wanted to go over the awards. So the fight of the night went to Guram Katuladze and Mateusz Gamrot.
What a nice fight that was, and what a funny guy Guram is. I think he's a really great guy. I'm really glad he made his UFC debut. I think he's a great addition to the organization. For those that don't know, he's friends with the up and coming UFC star Khamzat Chimaev.
The Wolf.
The two of them are just great together. I like to see them. You know, they're always laughing, always busting jokes together. They look like they're doing great things in the training room together. And it's just like a great relationship to see between the two of them.
Yeah, he seems like a great guy. And what kind of upset me was that he was really upset. He was upset with his performance, and I thought he did pretty well. I thought he won the fight, but I could see why he was a little bit upset with his performance. The third round didn't go exactly how he wanted it to. And I believe that was like fresh in his mind, so right. That's what caused his dissatisfaction after the fight.
Right. For those that missed it, he's a very good kickboxer and was pretty dominant for the first two rounds, even though he got taken down a couple of times. But in the third round, I think it's fair to say he lost the third round due to Gamrot's wrestling and just ground game.
Yeah. So moving on, performance of the night went to Jessica Andrade. We're gonna get into her in a little bit. And performance of the night also went to Jimmy Crute with that spectacular knockout in the first round. We'll get into Mr. Crute as well. But what I believe was what the performance of the night that they missed was Brian Ortega versus the Korean Zombie. And I feel like this is an issue in the UFC because just because Brian Ortega didn't get the knockout or he didn't get the submission, he got the decision win, and I guess that's why he didn't get the performance of the night. But I thought he put on a spectacular performance.
Oh yeah, the whole main event was just amazing and exciting to watch. Brian Ortega had an absolute dominant performance. I'm so happy that he came back the way he did. That was his first time fighting in almost 2 years since his loss to Max Holloway, and to see him coming off a beating like that to improve so much, I'm glad to see it. Not only did he come back just as strong, he came back better, in my opinion. We saw his striking was a lot more developed. He changed camp, so clearly it's been paying dividends, and we're seeing the results. A lot of us were thinking that Korean Zombie would have the advantage on the standing up, and then Brian Ortega's only key to success would be to take him down and try to submit him.
I mean, yeah, the Korean Zombie was a favorite.
Yeah, and as we saw, I was personally surprised to see Brian Ortega had looked like he had some trouble taking down Korean Zombie. He only landed 3 takedowns of 10 attempts. And for Brian Ortega, I would say I was expecting to get those takedowns a little bit more easily. But what I was surprised to see is how much better he was in the striking department. I mean, he just completely outstruck and dominated Korean Zombie from start to finish, standing up.
Yeah, so as you mentioned, his striking has improved drastically. He did change camps, and he not only did his striking improve offensively, it improved defensively as well. And one thing that we've seen the Korean Zombie lose before, but one thing we haven't seen the Korean Zombie, we haven't seen him get dominated in this fashion. He literally got dominated all 5 rounds. He got dropped, I believe, in the first round. Did he or no?
I think he dropped him in the first, and then again later.
He might have dropped in the first. I might be messing that up. But he, with the spinning back, spinning elbow in the second, and he landed it again like the 4th round or something like that. But he dominated the fight from the first bell to the last.
Yeah, it was great to see. So a lot of people are saying that maybe it's time for a title shot for Brian Ortega versus Alex Volkanovski.
I mean, I would love to see that, but as we were interacting with some of our Instagram followers, and my personal preference is I kind of want to see Ortega fight Zabit Magomed Sharipov. I
like that matchup.
Yeah, I'd rather see him fight Zabit first, and then if he beats Zabit, which I don't think he will, if he beats Zabit, then I think he's warranted. He's warranted a title shot regardless. This is just my personal preference. But if he beats Zabit, I think he's definitely a top contender in the division.
Absolutely. I think it's going to come down to how, I guess, if the champ Alex Volkanovski wants to fight right now or not. He can take some time off, spend some time with his family if he wants, and kind of let Brian Ortega versus Zabit fight, or he can be more active, and fight Brian Ortega. But personally, as a fan, I think I would love to see Zabit and Brian Ortega just as a number 1 contenders match for the title. The two of them, I think, first of all, stylistically, it's a phenomenal matchup. Zabit is a kung fu style striker, whereas Brian Ortega is a jiu-jitsu grappler that's developed his boxing and striking, as we saw in this last fight. So I think the stylistic matchup would be a lot more intriguing, and I think it'll be a lot more closer than Volkanovski versus Brian Ortega. I think maybe Brian Ortega needs one more fight before he gets a crack at the title again, and I think Zabit would be the perfect fight.
But who are you and I? We're nobody. Mr. Dana White, the president of the UFC, hinted at Brian Ortega getting the title shot against Alexander Volkanovski. So that's what we're going to be discussing because that's what the boss said. What do you think? Do you think he has a chance against the former heavyweight fighter in Alexander Volkanovski?
Like I said, I don't know. The way that Max Holloway was able to dominate Brian Ortega and how close of a fight Brian Ortega and Alex Volkanovski had, I think that kind of should speak to it a little bit. Of course, we've seen Brian Ortega's striking develop so much since he fought Max Holloway, and it almost looks like a completely new Brian Ortega. So I definitely think it would the Holloway and Ortega match would be a lot closer this time around.
So let me interrupt you right there because you just mentioned that. So if Brian Ortega were to fight Max Holloway once again, do you think it would have, because the first time Brian Ortega was basically like a punching bag, right? As we discussed like hundreds of times already. But what do you think? Do you think the second time would go differently? Because we have seen his striking offense improve. So
I definitely think it'll be a much closer fight. Brian Ortega has gone out after the fact to mention that he broke both of his hands in his fight against Holloway, and so for him to block Holloway's strikes were hurting his hands just because they were broken. So he says that it got to a point where he would rather just take the shots to the face because it was hurting less than getting hit on his broken hands. So I think that might be a partial reason for Brian Ortega's performance. But again, we've seen his striking develop so much in this last fight that I think it'll be a much closer matchup. I hate to bet against Max Holloway. The guy is amazing. I'm not sure who wins that one, but I'll tell you what, I think that'll be a much closer fight, and I'll definitely pay to watch that one.
You know what would also be interesting, because like as it appears right now, Brian Ortega is going to be fighting Alexander Volkanovski for the championship. But you know what just came across my mind right now? Brian Ortega versus Max Holloway.
The rematch.
Give Max Holloway some time to make his name, not make his name again, but like get back into the title contention. Because he just, to be fair, I know it was not controversial, but there were close fights. But a lot of people think that Max won, all that, blah 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 blah. But
you don't think there's someone new that Max should fight? Because you're kind of giving him, I guess, either a Volkanovski rematch or a Ortega rematch. You don't want to see him fight some fresh blood?
I want to see him fight Zabit. I want to see him fight Zabit because Brian Ortega is going to be fighting Alexander Volkanovski. So I want to see Zabit
and Holloway for number
one. And
Holloway,
contender. Yeah. And
nice.
then
I like that idea.
And then Yair Rodriguez is in the picture as well. I don't know what would we do with him?
Hey, I mean, you could potentially give him a Korean Zombie rematch. That was a 5-round war that ended literally at the very last minute of the 5th round, where Yair Rodriguez just picked up his elbow and just completely knocked out Korean Zombie. That
was a close fight.
It was a close fight too. So I think the fans would love to see it.
Which is what makes this fight with Brian Ortega so crazy. How he was able to dominate the Korean Zombie. The Korean Zombie fought Yair Rodriguez not too long ago.
Yeah, and that was a great fight. I like that idea a lot. So I agree with you. I think Brian Ortega gets a title shot against Volkanovski. We have Zabit versus who do we say? Holloway for the number 1 contender match, and then
Zabit versus Holloway. I think Zabit versus Holloway would be pretty cool. I feel like fans would be interested in it, or Zabit versus Yair would be fucking sick as well.
It's a stacked division. I think the featherweight's the stacked division. I think by this time next year, I think we're going to see a lot more action. I think there's been a little bit of a hold up with the title, considering the Holloway had 2 matches and all that. So I think once the title gets, once there are more title fights happening there, I guess there's more movement on the top of the division. I think we're going to see a lot of great things coming out of the featherweight division.
Yeah. So in terms of the Korean Zombie, what do you think? I think he should take some time off. Recollect and see what the best move is available for him, because that performance, I don't know if Brian Ortega looked really good or the Korean Zombie was just off his game that night. I want to give the credit to Brian Ortega, but I don't think Korean Zombie's done. He's been in the game for a very long time, but I don't think I would still like to see him fight. I thought he was going to win, honestly. So I want to see him continue his career in the UFC.
If you ask me, I don't see him really getting too close to a title at this point in his career. But like you said, he's been in the game for a while. He's a developed name, and he's a great fighter to watch. He's really interesting. His striking's great, and there's always surprises in his fight. So I think he should definitely stick around. But to be honest, I don't see him making anywhere near close to a title run after this. I think this might be it for him as far as being a champion goes.
Okay, yeah. So moving on to the co-main event of the evening. Katlyn Chookagian, who was ranked number 1, versus Jessica Andrade. Let me hear your thoughts, buddy.
So, first things first, we should mention Jessica Andrade came up from strawweight into flyweight. So she went up a weight class. And, I mean, Jessica Andrade is always a smaller fighter. I mean, almost all of her opponents are taller. But, I mean, the way she dominated Katlyn from beginning to end, she was able to slam her twice onto the mat in dominant fashion. We saw Katlyn Chookagian. She had a lot of volume. She was kind of trying to keep Jessica Andrade at a distance, being that she's a taller fighter, but I don't think she was too technical and wasn't hitting her with anything too hard. So Jessica was able to get in there, get the slam, and what ultimately finished the fight was just a beautiful punch to the ribs, and it looked like Katlyn broke her rib. I'm not really sure what happened, but she completely...
that face said it all.
Yeah, she completely backed away and just started yelling in pain, and Jessica just took advantage of the opportunity and just jumped on her and finished the fight right before the end of the first.
There was one clear difference in this fight, and I think that was strength. This girl, Jessica Andrade, I don't know if we consider her one of the best in the division anymore, although you could make the case. But I feel like there was the clear difference between the two fighters was that she was a lot stronger than Katlyn Chookagian. Katlyn Chookagian did have success with the Shevchenko sister, not Valentina Shevchenko, her younger sister.
Antonina, I think.
Antonina Shevchenko, yes. But this is a different type of fighter. Jessica Andrade is she's short. She moved up, and she's powerful. And I feel like that power Aside from her technical background, aside from her years of experience, I feel like her power was the big difference in this fight, and that's what led her to the victory.
Absolutely, and especially seeing her move up a weight class where usually the opponents are stronger, and still to see such a big strength difference was pretty amazing to see. I mean, that was a great performance. So, looking at what's next for her, if we look at the top 3 in the women's flyweight division right now, so we have the champ Valentina Shevchenko in possible talks with fighting Jennifer Maia for the belt. Nothing is signed yet, but that's the fight I think that's in conversation right now as far as the UFC is concerned.
That's Valentina Shevchenko?
Yes. If that fight doesn't get worked out, I think Jessica Andrade deserves a title shot. I mean, she. By the way, congratulations to her. She was the first woman to have wins in 3 different weight classes.
Yes.
So that's pretty phenomenal as well. And again, she's moving up and still has such great power. So
yeah, listen, I think Jessica Andrade is a spectacular fighter. She's a very experienced fighter. She's good pretty much everywhere. But I believe that Valentina Shevchenko is a different type of breed. Her, along with Amanda Nunes, along with Cris Cyborg, the 3 of them, along with the Bellator's other champion,
Lima Lay McFarland. Yep.
Yeah, her. I believe those girls are just like on a different level.
There's just a skill gap.
Yeah, there's a skill gap compared to their I don't know, their peers. But I feel like the fight to make right now is Jessica Andrade versus Valentina Shevchenko. Do I think that Jessica Andrade has what it takes to beat Valentina Shevchenko? No, I don't. I think Valentina Shevchenko is way too technical. She's way too
experienced.
Crisp.
Yep.
She's a perfect UFC, not even a perfect mixed martial artist.
Yep.
And I love her personality, but aside from that, she is, I believe, the epitome of mixed martial arts. Her martial arts is just that beautiful. And I don't think Jessica Andrade has what it takes, but I think she has the biggest chance, even over Jennifer Maia at this moment in their careers.
I completely agree with you 100%. And being that Jessica Andrade moved up and they matched her up against the number 1 contender and she beat her in the first round in such dominant fashion, I mean, who else besides the champ makes sense? You know what I mean? Like, you can't really have her fight anyone ranked that much lower. So I'm hoping that Shevchenko and Maia get signed soon and they settle their business so that Jessica Andrade gets her shot.
Yes. So moving along on the card, so we're gonna discuss Jimmy Crute's knockout, and then we're gonna move on to some news in Bellator. So Jimmy Crute fought Modestas Bukauskas. He won via first round TKO, and so let me just play it out. What happened? So he gets the TKO. He sits down. He realized that his opponent is on the floor. He sits down. He gives him a hug. He gets up. He runs across the octagon. He jumps across the octagon, and then he goes to Dana White, presenting his case for a fight of the night bonus or whatever. What did you think of that? What did you think of that knockout?
My first reaction was, holy shit. The way his opponent just folded on the floor, it was like...
I think your first reaction was, oh, hey, let me send this highlight to me. Yeah.
That's the first thing I did. When I saw that on Instagram, I sent it over to you like, holy shit, that was a beautiful knockout. He literally looks like he just flipped a switch and his whole body just turned off and he just collapsed. Like, it was insane. Perfect landed punch.
Yeah, it was beautiful. I'm excited for the kid. He's young. I believe he posted something about him being one of the youngest kids. What is he? This is light heavyweight, I believe, right?
Light heavyweight, yep.
Yeah, he's one of the youngest fighters in the top 15 right now, or something along those lines. The kid has a lot of potential. If you look at him, he's built. He's very stocky, and I feel like he'll go a long way in the UFC. And I'm excited for him. And he seems like an awesome dude. Absolutely.
Especially light heavyweight being a little bit of a quieter division over the last few months. I think it's a perfect chance. If he gets a few more dominant, impressive wins like this, I mean, he could be the face of the light heavyweight division going forward.
That might be a little bit of a stretch, but yeah, let's see.
Hey, I mean, aside from Dominic Reyes, who just got demolished, and Jan Blachowicz, I mean...
Dominic Reyes? Okay, yeah, and Jan Blachowicz.
How many other great light heavyweights? DC is gone. Gustafsson is gone. Jones is gone. You know what I mean? There's a lot of the faces of the light heavyweight division are gone now. So it's kind of time for some new face.
Johnny Walker time.
Hopefully he gets his stuff together. I love Johnny Walker, man.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. See, the kid has a lot of potential, and I'm very excited for him. That knockout was spectacular, and I hope to see a lot of great things from the kid. So as we know, there's a lot going on in the UFC. Most significantly with Justin Gaethje and Khabib coming up, but there's a lot of traction gaining in Bellator as well. Let's start off with Cris Cyborg. She just fought on October 15th against Arlene Blanco. She won via submission, her first submission ever. So let me hear your thoughts on that.
First of all, big congratulations to Cris Cyborg on her first submission win. We all know Cyborg is a dominant striker, as a dominant knockout artist. And this time, she got her first submission win against Blanco. Everyone's been saying for a while that she has great jiu-jitsu game. And I think we finally were given the opportunity to see just how good she is. It was pretty one-sided. She got the mount. She slipped a rear naked choke in, and she got the submission. It was an excellent performance, and congrats to Cris Cyborg.
Yeah, the crazy thing about it is that if I were to ask you before this fight, how is Cris Cyborg going to win? You would never say by...
Oh, I would have said knockout.
I want to see the bet slips of the people that bet on her winning via submission, because those guys, we need to be following those guys, because like who expected this? But good for her, man. She was the Strikeforce champion, then she became the UFC champion, and then now she's the Bellator champion. So congratulations to her. It's spectacular to see what she's been doing in the sport. Since she's been in the MMA, she's been dominating.
Yeah, I think aside from Amanda Nunes, all of her fights have just been super dominant. The Felicia Spencer one was also a bit weird. It wasn't really competitive, but I don't think Cyborg was as dominant. But just about every other one of Cyborg's fights have been one-sided, complete domination fights.
Yeah, so tying into Amanda Nunes, there was actually a quote by Cris Cyborg. I'm going to read off the quote. It says, "It's not a dream. It's a goal in MMA to do something different. A super fight between Bellator champion and the UFC champion, Amanda Nunes and I. I think it would help MMA a lot." I have my opinions on this, on the cross promotion with Bellator and UFC, but what's your take on this? You think it would be good for the sport? I mean, like, they have it in boxing, so...
Cross promotion in general, I would love to see that in MMA. I think there's some very interesting matchups we can do. But I'm not too excited about the fact that it's Cyborg.
Saying this, right?
Yeah, I mean, Cris Cyborg left on really bad terms with the UFC. For those that don't know, this is her second fight in Bellator, but prior to this, she was a UFC fighter, obviously. And her and the UFC didn't really have the best time whenever it came to any negotiations. Both teams, the UFC and Cris Cyborg's team, would constantly butt heads, and they wouldn't really get too much done, unfortunately. And I guess one of the worst things was right after Cris Cyborg's last fight against Felicia Spencer, someone on Cris Cyborg's team released a video saying it was something, it was a fabricated video, basically making Dana look like he said something he didn't exactly say. Yeah. And Dana got pissed off, and as soon as it got released, he saw it and he said, "I'm done with the Cris Cyborg business. I don't even want to, offer her a new contract." To be fair,
she did apologize for that, but like, why apologize for something so silly? Like, why would you do that?
Yeah, I mean, she was up for free agency anyway, so Dana's like, you know what, the hell with her. Let her be a free agent. We're done with the Cyborg business.
Yeah, but that doesn't take away from her spectacular performance. But the thing is that I would love to see a cross promotion, because there's nobody really left for Cris Cyborg to fight. She beat Arlene Blanco. And she beat Julia Budd for the title. And there's nobody really left for her to face in Bellator. What is it, Kat Zingano? I feel like she's going to destroy Kat Zingano. So
absolutely.
So I think the fight with Amanda Nunes makes the most sense, because in the UFC, Amanda Nunes doesn't have anyone that poses a threat to her. What is she going to fight? Shevchenko again? So I think that if there was a fight between Amanda Nunes and Cris Cyborg once again, I think it might go a little differently, because in the first fight, Cris Cyborg kind of like she like stormed out there and started swinging. I feel like this time, if she were to fight Nunes, I feel like she'll be more calculated. Do I think she's gonna win? No, but I think it'll be a different fight. I feel like she'll be a little bit more calculated. I think she'll have a game plan and not just go off there and like fight off emotion.
I agree. Definitely agree with you there.
Okay, yeah. So we wish Cris Cyborg the best. I'm a huge fan of hers. I don't think. Actually, let's not get off this topic. So with the thing about this, I don't think Dana White is gonna be for the cross promotion.
Why is that?
Because I feel like the UFC made themselves a huge name over the past 20 years, and I don't feel like they want to share their publicity with any other promotion. So I don't know. I don't think, and I feel like Dana White went on air and said that he wouldn't support something like this. So I don't think this would never come to fruition.
I think it'll be interesting to see. I mean, if you pay attention, Bellator has a bit more of a international presence than the UFC does. UFC is mostly has a mostly American audience, although they have been spreading into international markets. But Bellator is, I feel like, a little bit better known around the world. So that being said, I think it'll be interesting to see, all the MMA fans there that come together for a big cross promotion event. But yeah, like I said, I don't like Cris
It's very
Cyborg.
unlikely that we're going to see something like that.
Not anytime soon. I agree with you.
Yeah,
there.
but I'd love to see something like that because they're that Bellator champion. What was her name again?
Julia Budd.
No, not Julia Budd. The one that
Lima
yeah, I always butcher her name. Yeah, so I feel like she's a great champion, but I feel like she doesn't have any competition in Bellator. I feel like I want to see her fight the UFC girls, So I feel like cross promotions could be something very valuable, but I don't think it's something that's realistic at this time.
Agreed.
So on that, let's move on to some more news in Bellator. Michael Chandler transitioned. He's in the UFC right now. He's actually in Abu Dhabi. He's a backup fighter for the Khabib versus Justin Gaethje. First of all, what do you think of him being in the UFC right now? And what do you think of him just skipping everybody and basically being there to fight for the title if something goes wrong with the Khabib versus Justin fight?
So first of all, I got to say, I'm really excited that he signed with the UFC. I think there's a lot of great potential matchups for someone like him in the UFC. That being said, I think it's very disrespectful to the rest of the fighters in the lightweight division to give him the number one contender. I shouldn't say number one contender. He's basically the replacement should Khabib or Gaethje drop from the fight for any reason. I think it's just disrespectful to the rest because we've seen there's Charles Oliveira who's on a crazy win streak that one or two more wins he can have a claim to a title shot. There's a few other fighters. We have Dustin, Justin, Connor, Tony. There's so many people in that division that have been okay, maybe not Connor, but so many people in that division that have been grinding and trying to get their way to the title shot. I feel like it's just kind of disrespectful to put the new guy in there right away.
I agree.
I think he should definitely be given the opportunity, given a few fights. He just had a great fight against Benson Henderson. Beautiful first round knockout.
But to be fair, Benson Henderson hasn't been on top of his game in a while. But the thing is that I think Michael Chandler caught Dana White's attention, and Dana White just looks like he's a fan of Michael Chandler, so he's giving him the opportunity. But I don't think he beats. Definitely doesn't beat Khabib.
Agreed.
And maybe Justin Gaethje. I don't think so. But the fight that I would like to see is Michael Chandler versus Tony Ferguson, if and only if the Tony Ferguson versus Conor McGregor fight doesn't happen. But Conor McGregor is talking about fighting Dustin Poirier on January 23rd. That's a different topic. But I would like to see Michael Chandler fight Tony Ferguson. I know Tony Ferguson's coming off a loss. Coming off a big loss, actually. But I feel like that would be a good test for Michael Chandler to test the waters in the UFC.
Yeah, I think Tony Ferguson is, first of all, the Tony Ferguson-Conor matchup would be great if that ever comes to happen. But, in the meantime, while Conor and Dustin set their business straight, I think Michael Chandler and Tony Ferguson would be a phenomenal matchup. Tony, it's interesting to see how Tony comes back. Khabib recently said in an interview he doesn't think Tony's going to come back the same, after taking a beating like that.
I don't think so. I also think that Tony's going downwards in his career because his age, man, he's older already, you know. He was a savage. He still is a savage. He's Tony Ferguson. He's a lunatic. But
if Tony doesn't fight Conor or Khabib by the end of his career, I'm just gonna be so disappointed.
Yeah, both great fights, honestly.
But yeah, going back to Chandler, I think that'll be a great matchup for him, and I think actually Tony might be able to win that. Tony is a very unorthodox fighter. He's hard to prepare for because he's so unorthodox. You don't know what exactly he's going to do. He comes from you from different angles. He moves a little bit differently than other people. So
yeah, I think he's going to give Michael Chandler a lot of problems. And I definitely think it's too early to put him for the title fight. I think it's, as you said, disrespectful. But if you want to put him a step below that, put him against Tony Ferguson, I'm all for that because he is the champion of Bellator. He does have wins over some notable names, including Benson Henderson, as you mentioned, although he's a little bit out of his prime. But I like the guy. Let's give him a chance. See what he could do. Let's just be positive about him, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm actually really, like I said, I'm really excited to see what kind of matchups he gets in the UFC. I think he's a great addition to the lightweight division.
Yeah.
So before we move on to the next segment, quick shout out to Teofimo Lopez, who won via decision against Vasily Lomachenko. Amazing performance. I got to admit, I was rooting for Lomachenko for that fight, but I don't know what exactly happened. Lomachenko didn't seem like he showed up there. He didn't really start turning it up until like the 7th round, at which point he was down on the scorecard. So he would have.
Yeah, it looked like it was very weird because Lomachenko does start off slow sometimes, but he wasn't doing anything for like the first 6.
Yeah, usually it's
rounds.
The first 2-3 rounds are kind of like a feeling out process. You kind of just understand your movement and your technique. But yeah, like you said, the first 6 rounds, he almost didn't throw anything. So at which point, like he would have had to pretty much been just hoping for a knockout to win that fight. And Teofimo Lopez was hitting with power, with speed, and he just looked phenomenal. And he's only 23 years old, which is crazy. He's the youngest 4-belt champion in boxing right now at age 23. So big congrats to Teofimo Lopez as well.
Yeah, so now he has a WBA, WBO, WBC, and the IBF lightweight belt, and he's only 23 years old. This kid is a freaking savage. But one thing that I did take away from this fight, first of all, what the hell is wrong with these judges?
I don't know where some of them are watching. There was one judge that had a 10-round spread.
Yeah, so the scores were 119, 109 by one judge, 117, 111, and 116, 112. I would side with the 116, 112.
100%. I think that was the
I thought that was the closest one. That's what I scored it personally. But the other the scores are just ridiculous, honestly. And it's a huge issue in not only the UFC, but in boxing, corrupt boxing as well, you know?
Absolutely. Yeah, boxing has had a reputation for this for the longest time. And I mean, we've seen it again. It's just disappointing. I mean, I don't argue with the fact that Lopez won, but definitely not by that much of a spread.
Yes, so congratulations to Lopez, and there's a lot of things coming up in boxing, so it's an exciting time. Although we're in COVID, and it seems that like things are not going our way, but you know, sports are back. UFC is back, Bellator is back, boxing is back, so
plenty of sports to watch.
We're gonna have a lot of content, so very excited for that.
So, we are now time to talk about UFC 254, the highly anticipated event, trending right now to be the #1 UFC pay-per-view event of all time. Johnny, let's get your thoughts on the main card for this Saturday night.
Yeah, before we get into anything, during Dana White's little press conference earlier this morning, he was saying that this event drew like 2 billion freaking impressions, which is fucking insane. Like, dude, like that's insane.
This fight, I mean, everyone around the world is watching. You know, they literally have Russian fans, Arab fans, Muslim fans, American fans. Like everyone is tuning in for this. Like this is the fight to watch.
Yeah, this is like the typical like Rocky themed Russia versus America fight. No, seriously, it is. Khabib, the Russian champion, versus Justin Gaethje, the American interim champion. But before we get into that fight, let's run through this card real quick. See, it's honestly a pretty stacked card. I'm not gonna say it's one of UFC's best cards that they put on, but they have some enticing and intriguing fights on this card. Let's start off with Magomed Ankalaev versus Ion Cutelaba. All right, so this fight happened about 8 months ago, and it was a very weird fight. What were your impressions of the first fight?
So, the first fight that happened between the two of them about 8 months ago, the two of them, as they're being announced to fight, mind you, they're in the cage already. Kutelaba just walks across the octagon and gets literally forehead to forehead against Ankalaev, and then security gets involved. There's a whole bunch of pushing and shoving and a whole scruffle. Really strange.
Yeah, it was very. I'm never gonna forget that moment because I remember texting you and you were doing something that night, and I was like, "Yo, Eric, are you watching what the hell is going on right now? It's freaking insane." The dude just came up to him and starts like grilling him right in his face. The security is like right. It was insane.
It's crazy. And then to make it, I guess, even more weird, as the fight ended in a minute or two off of, in my opinion, a really nonsense stoppage. So it looked like Ankalaev maybe hit Kutelaba with the overhand right, and Kutelaba just kind of started, bobbing and weaving his head, feinting a little bit, and I guess the ref didn't like what he saw, and he thought that was a TKO, and I just can't understand what he saw, because that's not what anyone else really saw.
Yeah, I think it's fair to say the ref kind of fucked up on this call. The fight shouldn't have been stopped. It was definitely an early stoppage, which is why Ian Kutelaba was very adamant about the rematch, and this is why it's happening again. And this fight, it's on books. It's supposed to be very, very. It's supposed to be a very exciting fight. They're both very aggressive fighters. They're both very wild fighters. So I don't think this fight could be boring. There's nothing about this fight says boring.
Right. I mean, considering how the first one went, and this rematch has been rescheduled. This is the third time they're rescheduled, because the first two got postponed. So there's a lot of feelings building up to this fight. So I think that they're going to be able to finally get all their business out in the octagon this Saturday. Yeah, very happy to see it.
Magomed Ankalaev is actually is on a 4-fight win streak. He is my pick for this fight. Who's yours?
Yeah, I agree. I think Ankalaev takes it. I think he's the more composed fighter, and that's what I like to see. I thought Ian Kutelaba was a little bit, I guess, too crazy, too in over his head, and to be honest, I just liked what I saw with Magomed Ankalaev.
Yes, I agree. All right, moving on. Lauren Murphy versus Lilia Shakirova. I have Lilia Shakirova on this one. Who's your pick?
I think I'm just I would lean with the veteran Lauren Murphy. I think her experience will prevail in this matchup.
Okay, very fair, very fair. Okay, next fight is Jacob Malkoun versus Philip Hawes.
If I can be honest, I'm not too familiar with Jacob Malkoun, but Philip Hawes, I've seen his last couple of fights, and I like what I see. He's definitely an interesting prospect. I'm keeping an eye on him.
Okay, so now for the real main event of UFC 254 Fight Island, Alexander Volkov versus Walt Harris. We know that this is the actual beginning of the main event. So just to give you guys a little background story, Walt Harris recently fought Alistair Overeem. It didn't go his way. A lot of people were rooting for Walt Harris that night because his daughter recently passed away. Unfortunately, she was kidnapped, and then she was... It's crazy to say she was murdered. It was like it was a huge deal in the MMA community. Dana White, along with the UFC staff, did everything they could to try to find Walt Harris's daughter, but unfortunately, they found her a little bit too late. And I personally wanted him to take it that night, just because to make him happy. The dude lost his daughter, but. He has a very experienced Alexander Volkov across from him on Saturday night. So I think I have a lot of respect for Walt Harris. I do think that he has the capability of ending this fight with one punch. We know that in his past, in most of his fights, he wins either by KO or by TKO. So if that occurs, I wouldn't be surprised. But I do think that Alexander Volkov is going to be able to keep the fight out of range, and he's going to be the more experienced fighter in there, and I feel like he's gonna take it, in my opinion.
I think the biggest discrepancy we're gonna see is just the size difference. Walt Harris is, he tends to be the shorter guy in the division, and Alexander Volkov is standing at a phenomenal 6'7".
6'7".
The man is huge. So I think off the bat, the biggest thing is going to be their size advantage. I agree with you. I think that Walt Harris could get a knockout if he finds himself in the inside position, inside the clinch, so to speak.
Inside the clinch, yeah.
So I think if he can find a way to deal with Volkov's lengthy arms and reach, I feel like if he can find his way on the inside, I feel like he can definitely land the shots he needs to come out with the win. We've seen Volkov in his fight with Derek Lewis. He was winning that fight, in my opinion, and then, late in the fifth, Derek Lewis hit him and knocked him out with the TKO in the end of the last round. So that was a little bit disappointing to see him kind of give up a fight that he was winning most of.
Yeah, so Volkov, his most recent loss was actually to Curtis Blades, and then prior to that, he beat Greg Hardy. And as you mentioned, he lost to Derek Lewis via KO in the third round late in the fight. But he does have he has some notable wins. He beat Fabricio Verdum. He beat Stefan Struve, who is also, in his respect, the skyscraper.
Hey, it's his nickname. He's the skyscraper.
Yeah, he's really big as well. So with Alexander Volkov, the thing about him is he's a very unorthodox fighter. Just given his height, it's very difficult to calculate him. And I don't think, with all due respect to Walt Harris, I don't think he has what it takes to calculate Volkov, unless he gets that punch, of course.
So who do you think gets a hand raised?
Alexander Volkov. You?
I hope Walt Harris. Like you said, I kind of just feel bad for the guy. I feel like he does need something to pick his spirits back up. I'm gonna go with Harris for this one. I really hope he takes home the win.
Okay. I wouldn't be upset with that either. Okay, moving on to the co-main event of the evening: Robert Whittaker versus Jared Cannonier. I'm gonna start off with this one. I'm gonna say I think Robert Whittaker is a more experienced fighter. He has some incredible wins in his resume. Let's just go through it. He recently beat Darren Till via decision. He lost to Israel Adesanya. Prior to that, he beat Yoel Romero twice. I know it was controversial. I thought he won the first one. I thought he lost the second one, but it's freaking Yoel Romero at the end of the day. He beat Souza. He beat Derek Brunson. He beat Uriah Hall. He beat Brad Tavares. He beat some notable names. I'm not discrediting Jared Cannonier, but I know that Jared Cannonier, in his own right, is on a three fight win streak. He beat Jack Hermanson, he beat Anderson Silva, the old Anderson Silva, and he beat David Branch. So he's a dangerous one himself. But I do think that experience, wisdom, and fight IQ is going to play a big factor in this fight, and I think Whittaker is going to be able to figure out Cannonier's game plan.
Yeah, so like you said, I think Whittaker's experience is going to be his advantage in this fight. Whittaker has been in those 5-round wars. He's been, like you said, he's been there with Romero. He's been there with his past few opponents. He's a title. He held the title for a while, so he's been in a bunch of those 5-round fights. We haven't really seen that with Jared Cannonier. He's only been in 3-round events, but even of those events, he usually is out of there before he gets to the third, which is, great for him. But I think if the fight goes to the later rounds, I think Whittaker will have the experience, the conditioning, and I guess the mental ability to hang in there probably longer than Jared Cannonier can. I think he'll... Jared Cannonier, if the fight ends within the first round or two, I have a hunch that Cannonier will get his hand raised. But if it goes in the third round or later than that, I'm fairly confident Whittaker is going to win.
You know who's going to be happy if Cannonier wins?
Israel Adesanya.
Israel Adesanya is going to be very happy because he mentioned that he wants to fight Cannonier if he beats Whittaker. I personally think that Israel Adesanya destroys Cannonier. I only want to see him fight John Jones. That's the fight that I want to see. That's the fight that you want to see. That's the fight that all MMA fans want to see before John Jones gets too old and it's going to be like, oh my God, John Jones is out of the picture. I want to see that fight. Like,
for
Cannonier, you're the man, but
not the same level.
You're not on the level, brother. But yes. Moving on to the main event of the evening.
Khabib versus Justin Gaethje.
Just look at them right there. Just look at this picture right here.
I'm excited for this, man. For you guys that don't know, we actually kind of held off our podcast release for this event because it was such a big event and we were really excited. So we wanted our first podcast episode to be something special with an event like this.
Yeah, so Khabib Nurmagomedov, 28-0, an undefeated Dagestani fighter. Justin Gaethje, 22-2, He's an American wrestler. He's currently the interim champion. How do you see this one going?
So a lot of things to consider here. Khabib has been a completely dominant fighter. He's 28-0 in every single one of his fights. He's won all those fights. All those rounds. Yes. The only one round that some would say that he lost was the round to Conor, the 4th round.
False.
I disagree. I think Khabib won every single round of that fight.
Yes.
Now, one thing to consider, Khabib has never really fought anyone that has the wrestling credentials that Justin Gaethje has. I think the closest we got to see that was Al Iaquinta. And Al Iaquinta, in my opinion, gave Khabib his toughest matchup. Just because Khabib wasn't able to take him down as easily as he did other opponents because Al Iaquinta knew how to defend those takedowns. In my opinion, I think Justin Gaethje has better wrestling than Al Iaquinta does. But unfortunately, we don't really see it from Justin too often. So we don't know if it's still as crisp as it used to be, when he was a collegiate wrestler. We don't know, I guess, how familiar he still is or how comfortable he still is because, he's just been phenomenal standing up. He's developed great boxing skills with Trevor Whitman. The two of them have just been doing great work together. Gaethje thinks his key to success would be to kick at Khabib's legs, slow him down, break him down, and he thinks he has the capabilities and abilities to keep Khabib away and unable to enter in for a takedown shot, which I don't know if I agree with, but hey, I'd love to see him try.
Yeah, so as you mentioned, Justin Gaethje, he is a wrestler. He's been wrestling, in his defense, he has been wrestling since a very, very young age. I know Khabib has been wrestling, it's all over the media. He's been wrestling bears and all that stuff. And we all know his history with his father being his coach. Khabib has been wrestling Dagestani wrestling, which is a little bit different. He's been in the game since basically he could walk, And Justin Gaethje doesn't fall too far from that. He's been wrestling since he was a very young kid. And I think he could potentially pose Khabib a lot of issues if he's able to keep Khabib away from the fence. Do I think he'll be able to do that? I do. I want to say that I do. I think that if anyone is able to beat Khabib right now, I think it's Justin Gaethje because Justin Gaethje does have the wrestling credentials and he has that knockout power and he's so crisp with it. Just that fight with Tony Ferguson, it changed my opinion of him drastically.
Yeah, if I can just add one thing, I used to love watching Justin Gaethje. He's had 7 fights in the UFC, and of those 7, he's taken 9 fight bonuses home, and that just goes to say what kind of a fighter he is, what kind of performances he puts up.
And the thing is that we've seen the crazy Justin Gaethje, and throughout his UFC, his UFC performances, we see improvements.
Right.
We see drastic improvements. The improvements that he made in the Tony Ferguson fight were insane. Yeah, if Justin Gaethje is able to stay away from the fence, I think this could be a very long night for Khabib. I see this fight going either with the upset. I think Justin Gaethje, if he either upsets Khabib in the beginning of the fight, first round, second round, or Khabib just does what Khabib does and dominates and he wins via decision.
Yeah, I don't see this going any differently than any other Khabib fights. I think Khabib gets his hand raised. I love Justin Gaethje, so I wouldn't be upset if he holds the lightweight championship. But
great guy.
I think Khabib gets his hand raised. I think he's the most dominant fighter of our generation.
Yes, and the fight with George St. Pierre, if that ever happens, is another one we could talk.
Yeah, well, let's talk about that one when we get back from UFC 254. We'll see how the results pan out. Stacked card, guys. This Saturday, October 24th,
2 p.m. Eastern. It's gonna be early. It's gonna be early because it's in Abu Dhabi. Khabib has a big following in Abu Dhabi, so they're gonna play at their time. So 2 p.m. Eastern this Saturday. Me and Eric are gonna be kicking it on the couch, drinking some margaritas, some cerveza, something like that, But yeah,
we'll be back next week to follow up with you guys then. So tune in for the fight.